Hey there, welcome back to Cry Finance. I'm your host, Cry. Today's October 17th, 2024. The lighting continues to change here, and if you don't like any of that, you can cry about it. But remember, emotions don't belong in these markets, so let's leave that noise behind and dive into today's key insights. So, as we discussed yesterday, there were going to be some reports coming out in the morning. Those reports did come out, and the market opened up higher with a new all time high. Now, the market ended up closing a little bit down, really just flat, though. It was like maybe 0.01% or something, 0.03%. The Dow ended up closing up 0.3%, put on a marginal gain, but really nothing too exciting here. We did see that rally at the beginning of the day in all the indices, but it eventually sold off to break even. Now, the reason for this, in my opinion, is because we've just had this great rally from when we were talking about 5,700 just a few weeks ago, and now we're well over 5,800, marching towards 6,000. So really, it is time to take a little bit of profits if you are anyone with anyone with a sense of rationale. So it's a bit of profit taking. Wouldn't get too concerned. This is also a holiday week, so this is just how things end up going sometimes with holiday weeks. Really, we'll have more clarity next week. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, the top story today that was hitting all the wires seemed to be that Uber was interested in acquiring Expedia. Now, there was no amount that was disclosed for how much they would acquire Expedia for or what that sort of deal might look like, but I imagine that the only way that it would be able to take place would be an equity transaction, meaning that Uber would pay with shares. Now, these shares would probably be newly issued shares, and it would ultimately dilute Uber investors, Uber shareholders. So, really, not a good strategy from Uber's standpoint. Now, maybe way down the line, way long term, this could pan out for them, but it seems to me like a very risky bet if this is even true. So we did see this happen, a similar situation with Square, where Square acquired Afterpay. Now, at the time, Square's share price was at something like 300 a share, or maybe just shy of that. And after it was announced that they were acquiring Afterpay for what was about 30% of their equity, it might have even been more now that I think about it, but it was quite a bit. And now their share price is at a fraction of what it once was, and it still hasn't recovered. So, not a good idea, Uber, if you're trying to acquire Expedia. But hey, it could just be a really dumb news story. But that's why we're here. Moving on to charts of the day, let's start with IRDM, which broke out above the first resistance I mentioned last week at $32. And it actually tested the second level at $35 intraday. But ultimately, it closed below it at $33.57. The stock trended around the $34 mark for the majority of the day. If it breaks down going forward below the $32 mark, it could fall back into the $30 to $32 range. However, a break above $35 would put the next level at $40 into play. For now, I expect consolidation, but it's still hot off its recent earnings report, which came out today. So the next few sessions could invite volatility. Next up, let's talk about GE Aerospace. It's a legacy name with a lot of history. GE was previously three different companies, and now it's just the aerospace division. The stock has done nothing but go up since the breakup. While I'm not too concerned with the reasons behind the optimism for aerospace alone, I can tell you these types of moves tend to overshoot. The 200 level has been key, and it's a major psychological barrier. And with earnings less than a week away, we could start to see some selling pressure down to sub 190. However, if the optimism holds, a push toward 200, but likely not past it, could occur leading into earnings. Ultimately, GE will keep rising until it doesn't. And when the drop happens, it could be more violent than the rise up. Last, I want to talk about AAOI, Applied Optoelectronics. At the start of the year, AAOI was trading at about $20 a share and dropped throughout the year until about a month ago. I've followed this stock for a long time, and when it runs, it really runs. After climbing roughly 175% from its August low of around $7, closing today at $19, it's clear the stock is heading back toward its 52-week high of 24.75, suggesting at least 15% upside from here. If the $20 level breaks, we could see some consolidation between $20 and $22. A continued rally could push the stock toward the 52-week high. While the chart has been mostly parabolic recently, the gains could slow down as the stock tests these key levels. So tomorrow, we've got a couple different things happening. We've got some data points coming out around 8:30. It's housing starts and I think something else, but housing starts are really that's the main number. Now, the housing starts, we might see a response from the market, we might not, but ultimately, whatever happens is going to be overshadowed by what comes next, which are a few Fed speakers. I think we have 4, maybe 5 Fed speakers set to speak between about 9 o'clock and noon. So really, whatever the data is, doesn't matter. Now, then we've got this Fed commentary. That's going to matter for tomorrow, maybe a few days next week. But ultimately, we're leading up to this election. We're probably going to see some volatility heading into the election. And then this commentary is not going to matter anymore. So let's just stay sharp, stay focused, and just realize that the response from whatever the Fed commentary is usually not the day of the commentary. It's usually a day or two after that we see the response. So if there are any dramatic shifts in Fed policy or Fed sentiment, which I don't really see that happening, we should be looking at Monday or Tuesday's action, not the weekly candle closing, which would be tomorrow. So again, let's stay focused and not lose sight of what's going on. Well, that's it for tonight's episode. Thanks again for watching Cry Finance. Thanks for stopping by so late or so early. Usually I post these videos around midnight. I'm working on changing that, but for now, this is the time where I'm posting. So that being said, as always, I'm Cry. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.